Well, it's been a busy 99 days, to be exact, in the office for President Cyril Ramaphosa. From suspending SARS Commissioner Tom Moyane to firing errant ministers like Mosebenzi Zwane, it appears the president is set on cleaning up government. For more on this, I'm joined by Tasneem Essop from Society Work and Development Institute, as well as Professor Dirk Kotze, who is a political analyst, joining us from our Pretoria studio. Good evening to both of you, and thank you very much for coming through. Let me start with you, Prof, if I may. On a scale of 1 to 10, overall, how do you think he fared?
I would say between a 7 and an 8. What he did very well, I would argue, is very much in the field of the economy, that he created now a sentiment, a much more positive sentiment than, let's say, a year ago. He also changed, though not as many people wanted, he changed the executive, the cabinet, quite substantially when he reshuffled the cabinet. But at the same time, I think where he is struggling at the moment is with the internal matters of the ANC, as well as with the quality of government, of service delivery. Yesterday, or heard about the Auditor General's report and the state of local government, and I think that's one area where he still has to pay a lot of attention to. Okay, Tasneem, on a scale of 1 to 10?
I'm going to be bad and not answer your question about scales of 1 to 10.
I think not allowed, otherwise the show is not going to continue.
No, I mean, I think that 100 days is a difficult thing to judge in and of itself.
On a scale to 10,
yeah,
of admittedly, of a very short, we're talking about a very short period.
Yeah.
Only 100 days.
Yeah. So, I mean, we are talking, we are talking 100 days. 6 to 7 is where I'd put it. But, I mean, huge qualifiers for me. I think 100 days is a difficult thing to judge. One, because partly we're judging this based on the previous administration led by President Jacob Zuma, which was by many accounts a dismal failure, you know, across many boards. And based on that, you know, the kind of public sentiment has shifted around Ramaphosa, and that has really meant that, you know, a rating from 1 to 10 could go up. But at the same time, I think there have been major problems, and we need to really probe where this particular administration is going, and that's where we can judge, you know, the real substantive political and social matter of this question. So for me, it's a difficult one to judge based on public sentiment and the few, like, quick things that he's done, the quick wins that he's gathered under his belt. Good. Well, but as
another leadership expert was here earlier said, yeah, it's not really about, it's mostly not about tangible stuff that he, yeah, would have done, but very clear signals about the direction he intends to take, you know, and that's really what 100 days is all about.
Yeah, 100 days is a really quick kind of guess of where a particular political administration is going. I think for me, what makes it a difficult question is we're not talking about, so many have been talking about SOEs and how Ramaphosa has changed things already in SOEs, about SARS, about changing certain ministers in government. Those have been the kind of quick wins that a lot of people have been talking about. But for me, you know, the real, where this matters is that we don't just talk about SOEs in and of themselves or government ministers in and of themselves. We talk about them in relation to how they're improving or working against the lives of people, right? And in order to judge that, we need maybe a longer length of time to judge that. But we can also critique the fact that we don't actually know, other than these changes in personnel and certain commissions that have been, yeah, boards and commissions that have been set up, where we're going politically and how that's going to impact on people. And I think that's what we can judge on 100 days that we actually don't have.
Something we're going to come to a little later, the impact. But Prof. Kotze, you mentioned the economy, the positive sentiment that has been brought about by his arrival on the scene. But the fact of the matter, though, is that nothing has actually happened concretely. Or am I missing the point?
Yes, No, that is for sure. That is the case. But you know, like what we are saying is that the implementation side of it is going to take much longer. The implementation of an economic turnaround, of economic recovery, where we are going to see, for example, new levels of job creation, new levels of GDP growth, new levels of foreign direct investment. That is going to take much longer than 3 months or 100 days in order to see the concrete results of it. But I think what we are seeing, for example, is very much about the sentiment. To what extent is there more of a positive sentiment? To what extent is there a sense that, for example, the private sector is willing to cooperate much more with the public sector and with government? To what extent is the rating agencies negative about the South African outlook, the longer-term outlook? To what extent is the growth prospects being turned around, not dramatically, but from a growth rate that is going in a negative direction into a slowly but more positive one? These are the aspects that I'm really referring to or having in mind. So it is about what are the longer-term or the medium-term prospects that we can sort of derived from what we are seeing at this point in time. The targets or the objectives that President Ramaphosa set for himself is to make the South African economy more open, more competitive, more investment friendly. Obviously that of job creation to encourage that. And I think in all these respects, the positioning of government is better. There's the beginning, or there's at least the first steps towards more policy certainty with respect, for example, to the mining charter. The Minister of Mining, Mineral Resources, Gwede Mantashe, is very outspoken about the idea that the mining charter must be completed within the next few months. With respect to the amendments to the Petroleum and Mineral Resources Act, again, a very important aspect of the mining sector that they want to complete that, which in the past didn't happen. It created more uncertainty than what we have at this stage. So these are the positive aspects that I'd refer to in general.
Yeah. Tasneem, from your side, I mean, apart from the economy, which Prof has spoken about, what for you stands out as the one thing that he has done really well, or as best as he could, over the past 99 days?
Changing public sentiment. I think that's the biggest one. And I think that's really been the focus, right? Everything for me in the 100 days has been geared towards how do we lift morale in the country. How do we change sentiment towards government? How do we change sentiment towards the ANC through the work of government? And we saw this with, Tumamina, an inspired moment, but it's all very much geared around the idea of, changing public sentiment. And that in itself is looking towards the next national general elections. So we must read it in relation to that also. But I think that's been the big win for Ramaphosa. Ramaphoria has been his big takeaway from the first 100 days.
But was it not easy to do that? Was it not probably the easiest thing to do? In other words, what would have been, or what were obstacles in his path that that he probably surmounted to then bring about this positivity and good sentiment?
Yeah, I mean, I guess he could have fallen short with just a bit of bad political strategy, but it wasn't exactly difficult for him to boost public morale and to kind of shift the public sentiment quite a bit. So you're right. I mean, coming off the last administration, it isn't very difficult, and I think it's what a lot of people wanted. So he just had to play certain political cards, right? Play the moment in the right way, and that's kind of put him in good stead.
Prof, did he have obstacles in bringing about this positive sentiment you're talking about?
Well, certainly the expectation that he was very much hampered by the internal dynamics of the ANC. Now, if we take ourselves back to middle December last year, and with the outcome of the elections, it looked like it's going to create a stalemate. The majorities of both his own majority as well as the others of the top 6, except for the deputy president, was so slim that most of us felt, well, this is going to be a tough time for the Ramaphosa side to really establish themselves. And I think what we've seen is that, except maybe for the Secretary General and to some extent that of the Deputy President, which is still an uncertain factor for me at least. He has to some extent established himself within the ANC, and that there is not really an absolute stalemate with the ANC. My understanding is that the NEC, the National Executive Committee, is still to a large extent problematic, but he has found a way in which he can deal with the ANC, despite the fact that, for example, in a very key position, that of the Secretary General, the person, the incumbent, Ace Magashule, is not openly supporting him, or was not supporting him during the campaign period. But still, he managed to keep the ANC together. I think what is problematic are the provinces. The latest, obviously, is the Northwest Province, but also KwaZulu-Natal, that's still unfinished business, as well as that of the Free State, where there has been now a provincial conference and election, and then to some extent still the Eastern Cape. But I think the main challenge for him is going to be how to strike a balance between his work in government and his work and his leadership within the ANC, because it's clear that he wants to move much faster with his work in government, but to some extent the ANC situation is creating limitations for him. And I think that is going to be for the first 5 years at least of his tenure as president. That's possibly going to be one of his main challenges.
Well, if you've just joined us, I'm in conversation with Professor Dirk Kotze as well as analyst Tasneem Essop. The program continues right after this short ad break. You're watching As It Happens.